I don't know about you, but I love a good graphic quilt. This houndstooth plaid quilt was first born in my mind's eye when I saw a picture of a very fine houndstooth check fabric. And it caught my attention, and I thought to myself, I just wonder if one could enlarge this and make it big enough to piece it and have that houndstooth pattern actually represented in a quilt. So I took my little tiny picture of houndstooth plaid check and I took it to my photocopier and massively enlarged it until I could start to see how this could be pieced together. From there, I played with it. I sewed a couple of samples, and it was a bit of trial and error to try to find an efficient way to piece this that we did not have to sew these striped portions one piece at a time. I'm all about efficiency. So that's what today's episode is about. It is not the full pattern for the quilt. I'll post a link in the description for the houndstooth check full-size pattern, and there's a special for you viewers today at $5. And today's episode then is to show you some of the shortcuts I found that make piecing this extremely quick and efficient. Let's have another quick look at the quilt. This is a variation that I did. I used in this example a cream colored background, the lightest fabric, a gingery coppery colored solid, and then a subtle print that looked much like cork. I found that those contrast levels worked well, but in fact, I've mocked this up in all kinds of colors. Pink and white for a candy stripe or candy cane look, even with pink and red. I've done it with black and white for a super graphic quilt. Any of these work well. So here's another look at mine hanging on the wall with my black cat sitting in front of it. I did this example out of a navy blue, an avocado or kind of wasabi green, and my background is not white, but it's called haze. It's a smoky color. So there are lots and lots of options that you can pull together for the 3 fabrics in this quilt. There are only 3. All right, let's get to some of the tips. Here I am sewing the strips together. Now, these strips are 2.5 inches wide, so this is another great shortcut if you wish. You can buy solid color pre-cuts. So that would be a super savings as well if you wanted to get these strips pre-cut. But in my case, I did cut them out of yardage 2.5 inches wide, and the pattern will give you instructions for how many you need depending on the size of your quilt. There's 2 really important things here. Number 1 is you want your sewing machine, you want to double check that your sewing machine is sewing a beautifully flat and unpuckered seam. That may have to do with tension, it may have to do with having your timing well adjusted, but it's important so that you can zoom through all these pieces and they don't pucker or pull at all. The other really important thing is the width of your seam allowance. I strongly recommend sewing even 2 scraps together, 2.5 inch wide scraps, pressing them and measuring them and making sure that you're getting a 4.5 inch wide segment so that you know that that seam allowance is exactly what you need it to be. Trust me, this will save you much headache if you try a seam and make an adjustment to your guide to make sure that you're getting a 4.5 inch result. And there I'm showing you how flat that seam lays. There's no puckering or pulling at all. Very, very desirable. I'm sewing at a Singer 301, and the blue guide that you're seeing there is simply a stack of about a dozen pieces of painter's tape. And I can pick up the whole stack and just adjust it and fine tune it till I've got the perfect seam allowance width that gives me the perfect unit size. Then I head over to my ironing surface, and I've got a great big rectangle on top of my ironing table. I love having a long, straight ironing surface. And then I press this open. I'm using a Laura Star iron, which allows me to steam it and press it just from one side and still get a super flat result. And as you can see here, I've just done one strip or panel or subset after another on my whole ironing surface. After that, I've taken pairs of those subsets and stitched them together so that I've got a striped effect. Don't need to press that second seam, but now I'm going to go back and stitch on the other side again. So now I've got tubes, and each tube is just 2 colors. Again, the pattern will detail for you how many you need of each of those. And I'm spraying them now with a lightweight pressing aid such as First Press. I personally make my own, but this is just a simple light starch. Because we're going to subcut these into blocks and they're going to all have bias edges, I feel like this is really critical too. That little bit of starch is very, very helpful. I strongly recommend it. So again, I'm using my big old rectangular ironing surface, and I'm dry ironing it now because I've sprayed it with the wet starch. I'm dry ironing it and pressing these all beautifully, beautifully flat. Now we're heading to the cutting mat, and I've slowed this down so I have time to explain things. I've put blue painter's tape as markings for my guidelines on the ruler, and it just makes me avoid any errors by having those markings in place. And note too that I'm not using the edge of the fabric, but rather the seam, the stitching line for the alignment of my ruler. And so I'm setting my blue markers right exactly on that stitching line, and the tip of my ruler just extends over the edge of the strip. And that's where I'm going to start cutting then on both angled sides of this ruler. And now you start to see the benefit of that light starching that we gave the fabric, because it will help these bias edges maintain their shape throughout handling. So again, the blue painter's tape is lined up on the stitching line. The ruler extends ever so slightly over the edge of the fabric, and now we're going to go ahead and cut on both sides. The result of this is going to be that when we open that square up, when we open that triangle up, we get a result of a square that looks striped, and it's got a tiny little nipped corner, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. But this, as you can see, is the ease of not having to piece these bias bits one at a time. Instead, we're going to just subcut them out of the strips. It's important to double check, again, that you are resulting in the right size. So I'm laying one of my flat squares over one of my striped squares to ensure that they're the same. Okay, back to cutting. When I cut on both sides of that ruler, those triangles, I want them to be quite perfect in their angle. So it doesn't show super well from the angle we're looking at it, but the way that I achieve that or help that is on my cutting mat. When I spread out my long pieced tube, I line it up with the cutting lines from side to side, and I keep my strip straight so that I'm not off even the tiniest distance when I'm cutting the angles of my triangles. Now, if you need to, you can clean up that angle if you find that it's veering off slightly as you progress your way along the strip. But by and large, having my strip lined up with the cutting mat and then cutting my angles helps me keep everything as square and equal and accurate as possible. So I just continue now down the tube, and I can get 9 of these triangles, which are actually squares when they're opened up, from a tube of, with the fabric, 2.5-inch strips. So as you can see, this is an incredibly efficient way to get a whole bunch of quickly pieced squares, and I've got lots that I've already done sitting there on my cutting mat so you can see them happening. Let me emphasize again, it is worth making the first tube set and making some cuts and double checking that your finished size is exactly right before you mass produce these strips, as you can see that I've done here. Now the next thing is, there is a tiny stitching line across the points of each of these triangles, and that needs to be pulled out. And it does take a moment to do, but I think you'll agree with me that the efficiency and the fabric efficiency usage, like there is no waste in this type of method. It's well worth the few seconds that it takes to undo each of those. They open up, and that tiny little nipped tip is totally hidden in the seam allowance. Again, in your checking process, double check for that, because if your seams are not quite the right size, if your tube is just a little too slim, you'll end up with those nipped corners too big, and you won't be able to hide them in the seam allowance. Okay, having done that, we're moving on to pressing. And every time I do one of these videos at my pressing station, I realize, gosh, it looks terrible because of all the steaming and staining, but there you go, this is real life. So I'm simply opening each of those triangles into the square and pressing the seam toward one side. And as you can see here, I'm all about mass production, a real production line. And I love to do that, but it is definitely worth double checking that everything is coming out to the size and shape that you intend before you start doing this mass production. It will make the putting together of the whole quilt so much easier if you've taken the time to be accurate. So these squares, again, all the edges are biased, but because we put that light starch on it, and I'm handling them gently, I'm being careful not to stretch them or pull them, they still remain fairly accurate. It's up to you if you use steam or not. As you can see, I am a steamer. I love to set my steams that way, and they get so flat and beautifully smooth. I just know to treat my fabric very, very gently. There's no tugging or pushing going on when I'm pressing these squares. So we'll get lots of these done, and then I'll show you how they start to come together into the quilt. All right, we're going to lay out one of the giant blocks, which when repeated forms this houndstooth plaid. It's not a complicated layout, but it does require some attention. It's all too easy to turn these striped blocks 180 degrees and it messes up the houndstooth pattern. So it really is important that you look closely at them and get them oriented the right way. Nevertheless, it is not a complex pattern, as you see. Our block is going to end up being 5 rows by 5 rows, and I imagine I'm going to run out of room on my table. But let's give it a try. And you're seeing me working from a magazine here. Some years ago I published this pattern in a McCall's Quilting magazine, and it has since reverted to my ownership, and so I'm now making it available for you. The link is below. I sell the pattern in my Etsy shop, and there's a special price for YouTube viewers there. But this is how it comes together. It's quite simple. It's just very important that you do follow the printed layout and that you double check the orientation of these striped blocks. It definitely affects how the houndstooth stripes appear to be continuous. And it's important that the striped blocks are oriented the right way. If they're turned 180 degrees, it will mess up the pattern of the houndstooth themselves. So the goal is for the green houndstooth to be seamless, the plum houndstooth to feel seamless, and for the ones that are striped or twisted, for the green lines to be continuous and the plum lines to be continuous. So I realized here that I had gotten my bottom row in too early, so I'm going to stretch it out here and put another row in the middle that I had missed, and I'm going to tell you a funny story on myself. When I was videoing this, I didn't realize it until I went to sew it together. But the row that's in the middle, and on each end it has a green and a plum striped square, those are actually turned 180 degrees. So when you're looking at them, the green stripe should run all the way through, but you're seeing it almost like a checkerboard, green plum, green plum. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I did realize it when I went to sew it, and I swiveled those blocks 180 degrees. But you do see the full green houndstooth in the middle, and that's our goal. And this is what it looks like when I'm laying it out on my design floor. And in this example, I can see now that some of those squares I have turned again still, but I did write them before I sewed them. But what I wanted to point out to you here was another kind of funny story on myself. I know you all love a good blooper like I do. See the hole in the bottom? That's where I was short one piece of the solid color and I had no more fabric. Here's what I did. Look at all those seams. I had lots of little pieces and I made one patchwork piece. This whole square is 5.5 inches and it has 6 seams in it. But you know, a quilter will do what a quilter's gotta do. I did find enough scraps and I did fill that hole in my quilt. All right, one last look at my finished original quilt with Kitty in front. I was so happy with this design and it really is fun to sew. So I hope that you enjoy this kind of unique way of forming these blocks and the efficiency that it brings you. Let me know how it goes for you. And again, I have linked the full pattern in the description below this episode. Happy sewing!